Hello, my name is Danny G, and I am the Dance Curator and Music Programming Associate for Capital One's City Parks Foundation SummerStage Anywhere. We hope you've enjoyed the day-long presentations on our Instagram page celebrating the 155th anniversary of Juneteenth, commemorating the end of slavery in America. SummerStage is New York's largest free outdoor performing arts festival. In a typical season, we would be bringing you 200 renowned artists and rising stars from around the globe to 18 neighborhood parks across all five boroughs all summer long, reflecting the true diversity of New York and for free. Right now, while health and safety guidelines are in place, SummerStage will be bringing you digital performances through SummerStage Anywhere, directly to you in your homes every week. And now I have the pleasure of introducing tonight's panel conversation featuring longtime Alvin Ailey principal dancer Ho Boykin, dancer and choreographer Jamel Gaines, vocalist Marcel Davies-Lashley, and actor and poet Carl Hancock Rux. Following the conversation will be the premiere of Hanging Tree, featuring dancer James Banks Davis of Creative Outlet Dance Theater of Brooklyn.
Hello, everyone. My name is Hope Boykin, and welcome to Summer Stage Anywhere. Danny G, the curator of Summer Stage, originally planned a performance on the 19th of June to celebrate and commemorate Juneteenth. But what is Juneteenth? If you don't know, you will definitely find out today, because this amazing panel that I get to host and moderate and guide through a conversation will definitely let you know all things about Juneteenth and why it is so important that we keep it on the tips of our tongue, especially right now during our times. So as I mentioned the panel, I'd love to introduce them to you. We first are going to have Mr. Jamel Gaines, who is Artistic Director of Jamel Gaines Creative Outlet. We have singer, renowned musician, songwriter, and fellow bald sister Marcel Davies-Lashley, and also writer, poet, and all things creativity, Mr. Carl Hancock Rux. So hello, everyone. How are you doing?
Hello. Good.
Good.
Great. So my first question is going to be to Jamel, but of course, if there's something you'd like to quickly answer or throw in, don't hesitate to do that. But Jamel, when you were growing up, what did you know about Juneteenth? Or was it just generally Black history? Was there anything that prepared you for what you know now as Juneteenth?
Well, it's two parts to that question. I knew nothing about Juneteenth growing up. So I went to public school where we just learned the basics. We learned Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, and George Washington Carver. It wasn't until I got to church and studied under the bishop, Reverend Dr. Johnny Ray Youngblood, through the work that he does around Ma'afa and slavery, that really taught me the meaning of Juneteenth, how it came into existence, and its origin. Also around watch night as well. So really, I learned the meaning of Juneteenth and its history through church.
Mm-hmm. And so, Marcel, what about its relevance? How has it affected you, knowing the relevance of Juneteenth and how it's helped you move through the way you function in your art today?
I probably have been more connected to it in the last maybe 10 years. And it really has showed up strong, certainly in the time that we're living in now. So the biggest impact that has come upon me is the experience that we're all having in our lives in the world. My parents are West African, and I actually shared a little bit of this on Sunday when I was really blessed, I would say fortunate enough to sing at the unveiling of the Black Lives Matter mural in Bed-Stuy. That my mom was born in 1918. My dad was born in I always mix the years up. He was younger than mommy. But he was in Sierra Leone, Freetown, and he told me the stories about bodies still being stolen from shores long after Juneteenth, long after the emancipation. He remembers being a child and still seeing them taking people from the waters. So now, when I think about that in this time and how my children have so much more information about it, and I taught them what I didn't know, like Jamel, that was not in a book anywhere in public school in Brooklyn. It certainly is guiding my movement in a different way that I feel committed to share our story, tell our stories, tell the truth about what happened, tell the truth about where we are, and certainly not celebrate this country's history and it's what they told us about ourselves, but to now declare it for ourselves and let our children know and our other peers. I have peers of mine who really are not knowledgeable about the impact and what it really means to celebrate Juneteenth for all of us.
No, that's so true. And I wonder, Carl, in the most rudimentary way, if your younger self were sitting in front of you, how would you share it? How would you explain it? What would you say to you to tell you about Juneteenth?
That's an interesting question. So if my young self were talking to my older self, how would I, is that what you're asking?
Yes, yes.
So I suppose that my young self would say it is a memorial. It's more than a memorial. It's a celebration of emancipation as we know or knew emancipation to be in this country, the emancipation of slavery. And that's my younger self speaking to my older self. And my older self, of course, would actually have a much more complicated version of it. Because so like Marcel, I mean, I was adopted, but I had older parents. I mean, my father was born in 1915 and my mother was born in 1923. So I was also very aware of Juneteenth as a celebration, and as a writer and as a academic and as a scholar, I've researched so much about even just the celebrations of Juneteenth in this country. And even, what was very interesting to me, I think, participating in this project, was that it reminded me that there was a 19th century article that was written in the newspaper about the Juneteenth celebration here in Brooklyn. And they spoke about, all the Negroes who were gathering and the dances that they were doing and the food that they had. And of course, it's coming from a Western perspective. So it was a white reporter, but who saw this almost as other, or couldn't quite understand the importance of Juneteenth, but knew that all these African American people had gathered to dance and to do dances that they weren't aware of, to do these strange gestures and movements that they weren't aware of, all of those things, which is fascinating. Songs that they sang that they weren't aware of, which reminds me that we've always had a culture, and we've always had a language, and we've always had a spirituality that actually precedes our American history. And that's what Juneteenth really is. Juneteenth is, for me, not just a celebration of the Emancipation Proclamation. And it is not just a celebration of the moment that people found out that they were finally free, but it is actually a cosmic, conscious returning to who we always were. Yes, the linguistic of who we always were, the language of who we always were, our dances, ourselves, our freedom, our unity.
Thank you for that clarity, and I love it, especially knowing that Danny G's inspiration for this conversation are some words that Nina Simone spoke in an excerpt of some text that she spoke in an interview, and I'd like to share a little bit of that. And it says that an artist's duty, as far as I'm concerned, is to reflect the times. I think that it's true of painters, sculptors, poets, musicians. As far as I'm concerned, it's their choice, but I choose to reflect the times and situations in which I find myself, and that to me is my duty. And so the next question for all of you is, how does your activism play a part in the role of art that you create, that you are a part of, what you insist on standing up for, standing your ground in?
Well, I think as the first part of the question, I think that it has shifted. I think that going to institutionalized training in college and really learning the physical art form of dance and alignment and the physical part of executing your body to perfect movements is one thing. But I think as I came out of college and I really got culturally and socially conscious in the community, my work was very different from my college years and then after when I got out of college. And I think that had to do with because I was really deeply rooted in the community because I was involved in community activities. I was involved in church. I was involved in men's groups. I was involved in many different things. And I think that me being educated in the community activism, it helped change and sculpt my work. I think really going to public rallies. I think the piece that we just did, Hanging Tree, is a reflection of really what's going on now. So basically for me, I do try to create some works that are more or less physical and more about telling a story about social activism.
Marcel or Carl, would you like to add?
I would say now, probably more than ever again, I really feel compelled to share art and work and music, probably mostly, about where I came from and who I am. I talk to my kids, and I am actually African American, Liberian, Sierra Leone, my parents both being born there, my two oldest sisters being born in Liberia, and the last 5 of us being born in America. So I had the pleasure of starting out last year doing a one-woman show that I wrote. Thank you, Carl sits on the board at Mabel Minds, a series called Sweet Space, called Liberian Girl in Brooklyn. And that particular work that stretched me beyond what I thought I even had capacity to then become a playwright in addition to a singer-songwriter, it really kind of put a fervor in me to create art that shows Africa in America. So I'm working on a project now of Afro beats, several kinds of records, a hymn book version of something. I have a whole other story series, but I want the Americans that I know, especially my American, Black, African American people, to know what Liberia and Sierra Leone had to offer to whatever is going on in the world everywhere, and also to talk about the liberation. I have books and journals that my grandmother wrote of her travels and her work as a missionary for 45 years in Liberia. So all of that for me is coming into my work so I can tell the world about the stories.
Yeah, I mean, I guess for me, it's sort of interesting to think about the beginning of one's artistic career, because my artistic career, my formal artistic career, actually began in activism, and it wasn't. I don't even know that I thought that it was intentional to think of myself as an activist so much, but it was in and around the time. And actually, this is how the world is sort of 6 degrees of separation. It's how I met Jamel first, of course, with Kevin Jeff. I mean, which is really interesting, Ayega. But my brother had died. It was during the AIDS movement. My brother had died, and because my brother had died, the very first play that I had that was produced off Broadway on 44th Street, which Marcel also was in, was itself a play. But it was also a play that was produced by an organization that I put together, which was a social activism group, and that of social workers and psychologists and community activists and AIDS activists as well. So it was about raising consciousness, and it was about being very clear about what was happening to the Black male body in America, and not just by the disease of infection that we think of in terms of virus, but using those same words, the disease of infection and the virus of many other things like addiction and self-loathing and lack of memory and not being aware of who we are, and also just the disease and the virus that can infect so many of us in this country when we are lost and unaware of who we really are and what our purpose really is, because we are so far removed from our history. So history has always been a huge part of my work. History has always been a huge part of everything that I write. It's been a huge part of everything that I research. I probably research even more than I actually create. I can never stop researching. I can never stop investigating. So the Nina Simone quote makes absolute sense to me, that we have to constantly be active, that we must always be active in our existence and our being as we walk the planet, active as we walk the street, active as we have conversations, active as we talk to each other, active as we even identify ourselves. You know, I mean, I remember being 16 years old and hearing for the first time a teacher referring to African-American people as minorities. And I remember speaking up and kind of almost getting in trouble, but not really in trouble, getting in trouble in the class when I corrected him. And I said, I'm sorry, I don't understand what you mean. And he said, well, I'm just talking about, you know, black people as, you know, the minorities, black people, you know, the minorities, you people. And I was like, well, I'm not a minority. And I was very clear even then that I was not a minority, that I was not minor, that I was not born to be minor, that I was not created to be minor. And that was the beginning of a certain kind of an activism, that even the word itself to me seemed to be oppressive, and it seemed to be something that was accepted by black, brown, white people, by this country, a kind of polyglot that immediately told me there was something wrong with the way that we were speaking to each other and the language that we were using to identify each other, and that we needed to break out of that. So we had the right to constantly name ourselves. Yes? So that, so activism to me is in everything that I do. When I eat, when I sleep, when I drink, when I sing, when I hug, when I love. Yeah, and I think that should be for everybody.
I'm going to quote all of that. I'm not going to say that I said it. I'm going to say it was yours. But I love not being born to be a minor. That like really resonates with me. And I really recently had a conversation with Judith Jamison, and I asked her if she'd faced anything directly, any direct feelings of racism or acts of racism while she was out on the road on tour. And she said, of course, she saw things, but there were places that Mr. Ailey and also James Truitt would keep from the company, because it was their responsibility to take care of those blatant abuses. But there was once that they were in a diner and the waitress brought her sour milk. And I guess that particular instance stood out to her. But is there an instance that you can think of where someone was standing in the way of you creating some actual blatant, or maybe not direct, but something that was a racist act that kept you from creating? Because we deal with things every day. I feel like someone is in the elevator, they grab their purse, or someone says something that may be written off as a microaggression. But as we are creators, I find that we're continuously trying to build and continue to work, even though someone is trying to diminish our work. So do you have anything to offer as far as how someone might have tried to keep your work from being produced, being shared, had something to say about it? You're still on mute, Carl. Can you start over one? Sorry.
Unmuted. Here, you can hear me now, right? When I had a play that was produced at the Joseph Public Theater, and Talk, which was an Obie Award-winning play. But the very first review that came out, I remember being so disheartened because I'd worked so hard on this work, right? And the very first review that came out, which was in the Village Voice, I don't mind naming names, by Michael Feingold. There's an essay written about this, not by me, but by another scholar. Michael Feingold had, he didn't necessarily give it well, he started by talking about being surprised that I had this body of information, and he called me I think he identified me as a word slamist. I do remember that, which again I found really offensive, because I was writing plays before I was ever doing poetry, and I've never been a word slamist, and I don't really know what a word slamist is. I'm not slamming anybody with words, you know what I mean? And then the other part of it was that he went, when people say things to you like when you speak to people, and we've all, or many of us, I'm sure, have heard at different points in our lives, when they say, "You don't sound black," you know, or the way that you speak, you know, you sound so intelligent, and they may mean it in a well, I don't know what they mean, but they may intend to make it sound like it's a compliment, but you know that it is a microaggression. That actually they're really not complimenting you. They are insulting you. They're insulting your race. They're insulting your history, and saying, you know, that you're an oddity, because actually I thought that all black people were ignorant, right? And so that was sort of the tonality of this review. The other thing that he wrote was the play was rooted in a history that was not just about African American history, but also in you know, a Eurocentric history. I mean, it was a very academic play, and he concluded by saying, for all the information that I put forth, which was astounding to him and remarkable to him, at the end of it, somehow I did not solve my play. And again, that was another kind of racist microaggression for me, an insult, because what the work itself was about positioning myself as black in a white world, and it was not a problem for me to solve. So therefore, my play was not a problem for me to solve. The problem was actually his, or the problem was actually the world's problem, and it was for the world to solve. It was for mine actually to be an activist, right, and to position myself in a certain way, but it was not mine to necessarily solve my play or solve the disease of racism. I can't do that. I can't solve your disease. You know, people will be inflicted with this disease for centuries to come, and I cannot solve that. But what I can solve is my right to justice, to freedom, to have my voice, to make my work, to be heard, to not be contextualized in any kind of way that demeans me. I have my right to be heard. That's
Marcel?
I probably have a very short story. It started in high school when the teacher that auditioned me for music and art said to me, after I sang a resounding rendition of Home from the Wiz, you have to be careful how you sing and use your instrument if you're going to be able to sing later in your life. You should stop. Make sure that you're not singing too much gospel music. Ha! I would love to resurrect her and tell her, "Child, they hired me to scream. You crazy?" And many years later, I am better of a vocalist than I probably have ever been. I have more of a skill set than I've ever had. I have more control over this instrument than I ever have. I will never stop singing the music that is one of the loves of the many genres of my life. But she thought that I should preserve and reserve using my gift in that way that was going to tax my instrument and possibly force me never to sing again. How wrong she was. That's probably the oldest reference to racism about and around my production of my work and moving forward in my artistic life. And mostly I never listened to, don't tell me what I can't do, because then I'm going to show you what I can do. That usually drives me to the other side. And I'm so glad that she was wrong, and I've spent all of my life taking care of the instrument so I can sing the music of my people and beyond.
Amazing, amazing. Jamel, do you want to add?
Yeah, we went to Spoleto, Italy. There's a very famous arts festival in Italy. It's south of Rome, and we were at the festival for 2 years, for 2 weeks. Sorry, 2 weeks. And when we first got there, we could feel the energy of the technical crew kind of questioning our ability. They didn't know us. We were not a big famous company. They didn't know the name. And, you know, we came in kind of, dressed in our hats on backwards, and just kind of like hip hop gear and everything. People have locks and twists in their hair. We were not like assimilated. Some people had shaved hair and all sorts of looks and things like that. So when we got to the festival, we could feel the energy of the technical crew not really being helping us getting the show up. But as the show ran, we had gotten standing ovation almost in every piece. And then because we were there for 2 weeks, by the time the run of the show during the second week, we had packed houses and sold out houses because the word had gotten out that, oh my God, you got to come and see these people. You got to come and see these gorgeous African-American bodies and how they're expressing themselves and how they're speaking and jumping and so forth. So it was interesting, but because I had traveled and toured with Jubilation, Kevin Jeff, I was accustomed to going into houses that didn't know us, and then we would set a standard. We would set a standard, and we would bring our A game. So we went in, and I had prepped my dancers from Creative Outlet, not really going in on a negative, but just being socially conscious, because I had experienced that kind of sometimes when we traveled with Jubilation through Europe and Canada and other places. But that was the experience. I wouldn't say that they were negative and so much racist. It's just that because I think of television and film and their perception and what they see on the media, there was a perception of like, how did you get here and what are you going to do? And then our dress attire, as I said, was in the community kind of culture. So when we went in, we can feel not the so much really helping us out, really mount the show. And then we had changed them. And by the end of the run, we just kind of bonded with each other. And we did it through our art. We did it through our culture. We did it through our consciousness. And we did it through because we knew ourselves.
It's interesting because Carl reminded me that my particular bout with it was also in print. When I was with Philadelphia before I joined the Ailey Company, I had gotten a really nice review in Dance Magazine. And I can't think of who the writer was, but my mother had blown the review up so it's on my wall. It's a picture of me doing Jawale Willa Jozalar's Bati moves. And the reviewer said, Hope Boykin's unorthodox physique. That was the first part. I'm thinking, I must have an arm growing from my chest. And then it says later, has honed thighs that a quarterback would be proud of. Well, that's a man. So, okay, here we are in this thing where we're actually fighting against and pressing forward to move forward, even though these blows are coming. And I've often said, just like you said, Marcel, the no's were like fireworks under your butt. No, you can't. No, you can't. No, you can't. Here I am doing this movement, but no, you can't. Oh, okay. Yes, I can. No, you can't. Yes, I can. And then it reminds me of the fact that when I got a chance to dance to your sound, Carl, when I got a chance to dance to your words in another work by Jawale, Shelter, that was originally done for women at Ailey. And then when there was a men's version, you re-recorded and rewrote some of that text. And now that there's a joint version or the latest version that she did still includes your voice, that I got to move to words that sound like run, keep walking, run, keep walking, run, keep walking. So if all of you could talk about what that even means, because there's this run we have to do when someone maybe tries to push us off of our game, but then we keep walking toward our path. I mean, that's my explanation of it. And I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but as I'm listening to this conversation and being filled by it, I would love to know what you think about that sentiment, because that has stayed with me so much. Run, keep walking. And there's this never ending pace. So I'd love to hear you talk about that. Just really quickly. I know we can't talk forever, but this is so wonderful.
Okay, let me just say this. We all have sort of like, these experiences that overlap in certain kinds of ways. Run, keep walking is so interesting to me. And I'm so happy that you brought that up, Hope, because I can specifically speak about a time that I was in a rehearsal with a bunch of people that I know and working with. I was actually a performer, the lead character in a piece, Temptation to St. Anthony, which toured the world. But before it toured the world, it was our very first rehearsals. The very first rehearsals that we were in was in New York City, and it was like in the summertime, I remember. And we were dancing and sweating, and we were just dancing and sweating and sweating and dancing. I mean, we were just and then and we hadn't and day one went by, and day two went by, and day three went by, and the director, the very famous director, had not attended any of these rehearsals. Marcel knows exactly what I'm talking about. And this very famous director had not attended any of these rehearsals, but so we'd not met him. And then when we finally met him on this day that everybody was, I mean, it probably was about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Everybody was absolutely a sweaty mess, and we looked horrible. And then he entered in this suit and this tie, and he came with these women these older women in Chanel suits. These older white women in Chanel suits, and he had his assistants, pull out chairs, so that they could observe us and watch us, and they were served, water and snacks and things and whatever. And I suddenly felt right, I suddenly felt like I was on an auction block. I didn't understand, and and so the run, keep walking for me was very clear at that moment, because first started the whisper, and this is what I really want to get at. That racism right now, the racism that so many of us experience, is an inverted or sometimes often polite racism, right? Not it's not the one where they're where they're throwing something at you or sticking dogs in you and all that, but it's still racist in its own way, right? So you have this entire black company being viewed by this by these very wealthy sort of ladies who lunch, and no one even asked us whether or not, or told us that it was going to be an open rehearsal, or even told us that this was going to happen, and they were watching us. And I felt like I was being watched. And so my run, keep walking was I got my knapsack. I told the company, I said, I think that this is the most, this is probably one of the most insulting experiences I've ever had in my life. So I wish you all well, and I hope that you'll find a wonderful St. Anthony. I hope that you'll have a wonderful run, but I'm leaving. I'm out. And I left. So I walked. I ran and walked to the elevator to leave, and that was it. I was out, and only when the stage manager knew that I was leaving, that I was exiting that experience, did they come back and retrieve me and made the director aware of it, so that he had to stop the entire rehearsal and then make an entire apology to the company, and that was my run, keep walking. Sometimes you just have to run out of the experience that insults your soul. You must dismiss whatever insults your soul.
That's another one. I'm writing that one down too. Dismiss whatever insults your soul. So Jamel, I wanted to ask you, I know that what we're going to see tonight is called Hanging Tree. Could you speak a little bit more about what Hanging Tree is, what it means, how it started, as we close our conversation? You're on mute, yes.
Sorry. Hanging Tree, actually, it comes out of a larger work. I've been doing work around Maafa, which is a Swahili word, which means the great suffering during the Middle Passage, during slavery. So Hanging Tree is really like a seed that comes from that. Hanging Tree, actually, it's ironic, because Hanging Tree is really about what's going on in the country and in the world right now. I had the amazing pleasure to have Carl Hancock Wilkes do spoken word piece with it. Marcel Davis-Lashley lend her amazing voice, and James Davis, who is the dancer as well. Talu Green, who is the musician. And my idea was really to show what exactly happened to George Floyd. What's happening to, there were two brothers that were killed, what is it, last week? I think it was in California. So Hanging Tree is really showing what has been happening for over 400 years. And now we brought it up to date, we brought it up to date, but really tells a story of our people and the fact that just being, our brown skin, just being, So Hanging Tree is, it talks about slavery. It talks about the police brutality. It talks about our struggle. It talks about us trying to move ahead. It talks about us trying to educate ourselves. And Hanging Tree really shows all of that in the piece. And what we've done is, it's a collaboration of the spoken word, of the vocal, of the dance, of the drums, and tying that all together with the vocalist, with the Elijah Blake, who was the vocalist. So really, the idea was to tell a story of exactly what's happening in our world today. It's really self-explanatory when you see it. We're really commemorating. It is also commemorating Juneteenth, telling the story of Juneteenth. Can you imagine that in 1863, when it was signed, that you didn't find out in Galveston, Texas, until 2.5 years later that slavery was over? Can you imagine? And can you imagine all the untold stories that we still don't know about around our ancestors? So Hanging Tree is a symbolic piece. It's an artistic piece that tells a story of people of color all over the world, and it tells history. That's what the piece is about.
And I truly appreciate you sharing. Again, I'm grateful for Danny G, who is curator of dance for SummerStage and then SummerStage Anywhere, as we come to you virtually, to be in this room, in this virtual room with Jamel Gaines, Carl Hancock Rooks, and Marcel Davies-Lashley. What an honor this is. If we think about today as Juneteenth 2020, do you feel
Yes.
free?
Yes.
Is a question that we're constantly asked. And as uncomfortable and as painful as these conversations can be, they are necessary. They're necessary for us to have them so that we can do what Nina Simone said is, I choose to reflect the times and situations in which I find myself. And as artists, it is our duty. And I am so grateful for all of you, for the three of you, for being a part of this. Thank you so much. And thank you to Danny and to SummerStage Anywhere as we continue to celebrate the importance of Black lives and Black bodies, and we commemorate Juneteenth 2020. Thank you all so much.
Oh, the blood done signed my name. Oh, the blood, oh, the blood, oh, the blood done signed your name. This is not a crystal clear spring water libation. This is a rose-hued, drenched in blood libation. This is a we will shout your name in full breath and never allow you to be forgotten libation. This is your whole bloodline on both sides of your DNA libation. This is a thank you, soul sister. Thank you, soul brother. For as you lay down, your legacy holds us up and urges us forward toward true independence libation. This is a we answer your very last call libation. This is a the whole world knows your name now libation. And oh the blood, oh the blood, oh the blood done signed your name. And we know that you were here on divine assignment, and we will not let you be forgotten. This is sacred water. Its fluidity, washing away fear, and doubt and suffering in silence. This water, this holy water, we pour this sacred water to clear a path for us to live our way through without having to look over our shoulders as we exit our homes, without having to drive with our eyes constantly checking the rearview mirror. We pour this libation in remembrance of you, whose names we call, whose names we have uttered in clear voices. We will not allow you to be forgotten. We memorialize you as you return to the arms of our Creator. We pour your blood back into the earth from which we all emerged, in remembrance of lives lived until there was no more breath. We claim you in this moment as our own. We pour libation for brown bodies and melanin-skinned souls. We lift you up on eternal wings. Now fly, my sisters. Now fly, my brothers. Your living has not been in vain. And now, as we call your names, we will never allow you to be forgotten. Speak the names. Speak the names. Speak the names. Speak the names. Speak the names.
Dolores Cross.
Speak the names.
Dolores Cross.
Speak the names.
Sandra Bland.
Speak the names. Speak the
Trayvon
names.
Martin.
Malcolm X. Speak the names. Oh, the blood. Oh, the blood. Oh, the blood done signed your name. Oh, the blood. Oh, the blood. Oh, the blood done signed your name. Ashe, Ashe, amen. And so it is. And so it is. Be free, be free, be free, be free, be free. oh candy. Oh candy, oh candy. Oh candy, oh candy. I'll be I'll be I'll be
Remember the body. Remember me as I am. This is how I come to you, through the clawing pus of death, from a time of rebellion on crags above the river, after the night for war reached harbor. Death became the prison house of the soul, cartloads of corpses buried beneath the breast of the beach sand, birds swooped downward, from a sky limned in darkness, gliding over layers of siltstone, hungry for flesh, hyenas came swiftly, sifting through what could be devoured at the hind foot of suns, pulling up the raw parts of feasted remains. The sea climbed to shore, gathering agate and jasper over feldspar and tussock. She knelt at the finished feast of corpses, congressing the dead in her skirt folds. She carried us out to the ocean's wilderness, her hemline erasing evidence of unmarked graves. Reinterred, softening down, our ruined bodies take passage together. We, the dead among the dead, limbs, eyes opened with life, waves carrying, time, come, go, we become in the second house of time. Come, in, we become.
Underneath the hanging tree, he looks just like me. So tell me, am I really free? Could have been my mother crying for my brother, and everybody's praying for peace. But who's gonna protect us from the police? Keep these chains off me, 'cause I don't wanna be another seed underneath the hanging tree. Pray for me, Lord, don't let me be another seed underneath the hanging tree. On our bodies, the color of purple fruit, power of the blind, spent on designers that don't give a damn about you. Just sometimes, am I just living to die? Cause the way they do my kind ever seen underneath the honey tree.